What a great discussion. Thank you very much, Iris Rosenberg in Yad Vashem and the panelists. And I also want to thank Simi Allen, who's responsible for the media in Yad Vashem. And he helped us organizing this panel, and he's always very helpful. Heiko Maas, the German foreign minister, declared after his visit in Auschwitz, "This is the most horrible place in the world." And the Holocaust was also the reason for him to take over responsibility as a politician. We are very happy that we have now the possibility to listen his thoughts about the topics of our summit. And it's also a great honor for us that the Foreign Minister of Austria, Alexander Schallenberg, is here with us. The Israeli Foreign Minister will be represented by the Israeli ambassador in Berlin, Jeremy Issacharof, who was in former times also involved in the negotiations about a peace deal between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. So we proudly present Minister Maas, Minister Schallenberg, and Ambassador Issacharof.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I saw a photo last week and I just cannot stop thinking about it. It showed a man at a demonstration in Berlin, and he was wearing a yellow star. A yellow star like those that Jews were forced to wear in Nazi Germany. Instead of the word Jew, the word unvaccinated was written on it. It made me shudder. This cynic appropriation of the shore is extremely dangerous. It pushes too far the boundaries of what can be said, and it plays into the hands of those who capitalize on fears linked to the pandemic. To distort many mean to deny, and we have to pay attention to these phenomena from a regulatory as well as a media perspective. Because media do not only report or comment on reality, they also shape it. So it is our political responsibility to take adequate measures and initiatives to fight the new forms of anti-Semitism. In the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, we have initiated a global task force against Holocaust denial and distortion. We have tightened our national criminal law regarding cases of Holocaust denial. For example, German residents spreading such messages from foreign servers will be made liable. In 2017, Germany enacted the Network Enforcement Act to counter racism and anti-Semitism online. In the beginning, there was some critical debate about this so-called Facebook app. But the years since its enactment in 2017 have proved us right. Now the rules will even be further tightened. I would like to highlight some European responses against xenophobia, anti-Semitism and hate speech online. During our presidency of the Council of the European Union, we are working towards a Europe of security and common values in the digital world. We are firmly committed to democratizing the internet and strengthening the resilience of societies against disinformation online. The protection of our European fundamental rights and our fundamental values is not just an offline issue. We are pushing for the creation of a reliable and resilient European data infrastructure. We will promote a European framework that enforces basic requirements with regard to moderation of content, access to data, and transparency. Here, the Democracy Action Plan of the European Commission matters greatly. During our presidency, we will assess structures and instruments to fight anti-Semitism. We want to lay the foundation for a common European strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, especially in these times of crisis, our diverse media landscape matters even more. You hold a mirror up to our societies and to our political class. And it is in part your responsibility to name very clearly the threats we are facing, especially from the extreme right-wing anti-Semitism. Ladies and gentlemen, besides regulatory measures and media responsibility, we need real-life encounters. Therefore, my colleague Gabi Ashkenazi and I support German-Israeli youth exchange. Building bridges between young people prevents the spread of hate and racism. It is the basis for common understanding in pluralistic societies like ours. And it is the basis for common ideas and common future. I welcome the initiative of this meeting today. We need a start-up mentality for our relationship. And we need people to connect and work together who will shape our common future.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and pleasure to speak to you on the occasion of the first European-Israeli Startup Media Summit. Let me start by congratulating the ARD team in Tel Aviv, and in particular TV correspondent Susanne Glass, for this very valuable initiative. We are all aware that media in general and social media in particular play an ever more important part in our lives. They are vital for safeguarding our open and democratic societies. We all depend and rely on quick and trustworthy information for forming our views on international and national developments. But Alice, we all know that media can also be misused for disseminating xenophobic and anti-Semitic views, propaganda and hate speech. No open society can tolerate this. As the Austrian philosopher Karl Popper once stated, and I quote, "If we extend unlimited tolerance even to those who are intolerant, if we are not prepared to defend a tolerant society against the onslaught of the intolerant, then the tolerant will be destroyed, and tolerance with them." End of quote. In this context, let me be very clear. Austria takes its historic responsibility in the fight against anti-Semitism extremely seriously. We are therefore very concerned about rising anti-Semitic attacks all over Europe. Sadly, even Austria is not spared from such shocking events. Most recently, we had to witness the attack of Eli Rosen, the president of the Jewish community in Graz, the second largest city in Austria. The authorities reacted decisively, and the perpetrator was identified very quickly. The Austrian government strongly condemns this attack. There simply cannot be any room for anti-Semitism in our society. We are equally concerned about social media fueling hate speech and anti-Semitic language. The Association of Austrian Internet Providers has set up a virtual contact point for all Internet users who come across neo-Nazi or racist content. Moreover, the Austrian government is currently preparing a set of legislative measures against hate speech online. All at the European and international level, Austria is closely working together with Katharina von Schnurbein, the European Commission's coordinator on combating anti-Semitism. We also cooperate closely with the OSCE personal representative on combating anti-Semitism, Rabbi Andrew Baker. And we welcome the designation of the High Representative of the Alliance of Civilizations, Miguel Moratinos, as United Nations focal point on anti-Semitism. During the Austrian EU presidency in 2018, the European Council for the first time approved a declaration on the fight against anti-Semitism and the development of a common security approach to better protect Jewish communities and institutions all across Europe. Austria is also an active member of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance and was among the first countries officially adopting its definition of anti-Semitism in 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, 75 years after the end of the Second World War and the liberation of the concentration and extermination camps, we all need to remember the atrocities committed against millions. We cannot falter and we cannot hesitate in our fight against anti-Semitism. In this context, education is key. Each year, around 40 Austrian teachers are sent to Israel for a seminar at Yad Vashem and at the Center of Humanistic Education at the Lochamei Hagateot Memorial. Back home, they're passing on the knowledge to their pupils. We have to be aware that we are among the last people who have the chance to listen and to learn from the stories of the survivors of the Shoah. They are a stark reminder of the horrific crimes to which anti-Semitism, other forms of racism and hate can lead. It is our task and responsibility to pass on the stories to future generations. One of those important voices was Gideon Eckhaus, who had to leave Austria in 1938. We mourn his passing away in June this year. He will be missed as an important voice, as witness, and as admonisher. He will be remembered as someone who always focused on the younger generation and will serve us as a model on how to ensure that remembrance of the Shoah stays alive. Against this background, let me tell you that just days ago, on September the 1st, a very far-reaching amendment to the Austrian Nationality Act entered into force, extending the Austrian citizenship to all descendants of victims of Nazi persecution. The past cannot be changed and it cannot be rewritten, but we see this opening of our citizenship as an expression of the Austrian ongoing endeavor for reconciliation and redemption. And I'm happy to say that last week, Ben-Zion Lapid, a Holocaust survivor from Vienna, was the very first person to receive this new Austrian citizenship under this new law. Ladies and gentlemen, Austria and Israel share a long and complex history. And I'm glad to say that today, the ties between our two nations and between our two people are as strong as never before. The Austrian government program contains an explicit commitment to Israel as a Jewish and democratic state and to its security. Our growing economic exchange, our wonderful collaboration in areas such as science and research, as well as our educational, cultural and social relations, would merit an own long elaboration. And I'm therefore all the more pleased to be able to speak to you today as part of this very fruitful exchange. I wish you all a successful conference and I thank you for letting me participate. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I'm delighted to be with you today to discuss how we can shape the future discourse regarding anti-Semitism, racism and hate speech. I think this is a very timely subject, particularly at this time, as we see incidents of anti-Semitism, not just words, but also acts being perpetrated in our societies, not only in Germany, in Europe as a whole, and even beyond that. We've seen synagogue shootings not only in Germany, we've seen them also in America, and we've also seen the shootings in Christchurch, and we are now rapidly approaching the first-year anniversary of the attack in Halle. And I only shudder to think how that would have turned out had the perpetrator been able to get inside the synagogue and attack the Jews praying on Yom Kippur, our holiest day in the calendar in the heart of Germany. So we're not just talking about something which is theoretical, we're talking about words, we're talking about hate, and we're talking about words and hate that lead to people being killed. And I think you must emphasize this a great deal. And I think that one of the things I choose to always emphasize before friends, audiences and different gatherings that I attend is that today anti-Semitism and racism is not something which is just directed towards Jews. It is directed towards the Israeli community, but it's also at the end of the day directed to the heart of German democracy and tolerance. And I don't think that any country can survive with its moral identity intact without there being a very strident attempt to wipe out anti-Semitism in all of its forms. And its forms today have changed. Sometimes people don't want to be seen to be anti-Semitic, but they feel there is a certain legitimacy to being anti-Israeli. And therefore you see clear anti-Semitic attitudes coming out in Israeli tropes and various other slogans against the legitimacy of the Jewish country. And I feel that this is something we need to continue to fight. We need to fight anti-Semitism in all of its forms, particularly at a time of Corona, where we've seen the whole of the conspiracy theory industry and anti-Semitic conspiracies blossom and increase to an alarming extent. But I also think that this is a time where we need to pool our resources together and show that it's not the forces of hatred that will succeed here, but the forces of cooperation. When we work together within Israel, within Germany, between our two countries, and also with the community, the Palestinian community in Israel, and also with other countries in the area to fight this disease, we need to work together, and we need to make sure that our brand of coexistence and cooperation is what defines us today, and not the diversity of hatred that is sown by some people in our society. Recently, we've seen a very positive event in the Middle East of Israel and the United Arab Emirates agreeing to full normalization between their two countries. This is an opportunity of greater regional dialogue between Israel and its Arab neighbors, and a dialogue that can very dramatically support a very much of an extension of peace between Israel and all of its Arab neighbors, including with the Palestinians. So I hope that this is a glimmer of hope that will also impact the perception of Israel and how it impacts the fight against anti-Semitism, to show that the Israeli government, the Jewish communities are working together in order to reinforce their cooperation and their relations with Europe as a whole. I, in particular, am in Germany, and I see a relationship which has become very strong over the last years, even though there's been a very difficult burden of history to overcome. But we've seen many different events which show that you can rise above hatred, rise above hatred of the other, and begin to forge a different destiny for both of our peoples. So I would hope that this conference will be successful, and I hope that this will also lead to a broader and deeper discussion on this very important issue in a way that dramatically contributes to our welfare and our prosperity of our societies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Maas, Minister Schallenberg, and Ambassador Issacharof. And we are back in about 5 minutes with a presentation of the Bertelsmann Stiftung survey.